Good afternoon, and tonight we have a special edition. I'm delighted to be joined all the way from Los Angeles by the one and only Victor Boyce and Libby Boyce, the parents of renowned actor Cameron Boyce, who is a very prominent star in terms of, you might all remember him from Nickelodeon TV, from his time in Jesse. You might remember him from his time in films with Adam Sandler in terms of The Grown-Ups, and a real sort of funny, sort of nice-witted young man with a sort of real sort of a promising acting career, well established for him, and a good level head on his sort of shoulders. And Victor, Libby, I suppose Cameron growing up, was he always a sort of an adventurous, real self-confident sort of guy that wanted to be front in line, always the center of attention type of guy? Did he just love that sort of stage sort of presence and having the spotlight to himself?
Actually, no.
Okay.
He did not. He started out not quiet, but he was always very cerebral. He would look at things and watch people do things and kind of just stand back and analyze and watch. He never was the kind of kid to be out front until one day he was, when he was in preschool, about 4 years old. They had a little dance exhibition, and we didn't know they were doing it. It was a surprise for the parents. And Cameron ended up being the standout by far in this little show, where he danced the best, to the point where all the kids kind of stopped doing what they were doing and just watched him do the dance. And then the parents, including us, we were just like, what is this? We had no idea. So it kind of started there. From there, he started actually going to dance lessons. He did karate. He kind of found his way. And there was a kid in his preschool that was also he started doing commercials. So we just yeah, let's try that and just see what happens. And he took to it, and it took a while for him to actually book his first job, per se, his first commercial. It took a long time, and I figured it was never going to happen.
A long time, by the way, is 6 months, which is not really long.
Well, that's a long time, because some kids never ever book anything. So he booked his first commercial for about 6-7 months of trying, and then from there, he literally never stopped.
And I suppose, Victor, Libby, in terms of a childhood, but in terms of acting, was he very involved? Was he very involved in sports? Was he into his basketball, his American football, his soccer?
Basketball. Basketball was a sport. We played basketball at several different parks and gyms and junior Lakers. He was a huge Lakers fan. And so we played our local YMCA Lakers basketball. He was in a celebrity basketball. He was very, very good at basketball. We played football. We played flag football in the park. Never played tackle football. Flag football is like similar, but you don't tackle, you just snatch the flag up. Capture someone. So it's a little less violent.
I suppose, lads, when he got the opportunity to come on board in terms of Nickelodeon, as is probably a sort of a child star in terms of developing sort of projects, that was there a sort of fear of parents in terms of that sort of exposure being so young? We've seen in circumstances in the past with Lindsay Lohan and Miley Cyrus, and being exposed to that sort of a world, and obviously then it builds up all these extra pressures and sort of anxieties and stuff like that that the human teenager just ain't able to cope with. Was Cameron sort of level-headed? Could he take himself away from that sort of world when he was not sort of acting? And
let's back up a little bit. First of all, he was never on Nickelodeon. It's all Disney. But you're right, and the fact about child stars, and especially here in LA and Hollywood. Personally, I knew a couple. I won't mention their names, but it was a couple that were certifiable messes, and I wanted nothing to do with that life for my son. I was always trepidatious about Hollywood, and it was only until we found out that we realized that it's the foundation coming from the house that makes a difference, not the industry. The industry is cutthroat. They will chew you up and spit you out. There's no doubt about it. But if you're grounded and you come from a a good family background and support and love and outside activities that you see as a child growing up, then you can navigate that and be fine. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It was terrifying sometimes to think of what could go wrong and what we did see go wrong with other people,
But to
that we
be
knew and that we didn't know as
But to be
well.
fair, I really never worried because we are a very strong family. There's a lot of love and happiness in our family and groundedness and roots. And so I never really worried about him because, and if I did worry about him, we would have pulled him out. But I never worried about him because he was always extremely down to earth, authentic, and really was like an old man and kind of understood not only that what could happen, which he avoided, he always avoided the drama, and also like the power in a sense that he had to help others.
One more thing about that is a lot of the, not a lot, but there's many child actors where their parents were either actors or singers or wannabe actors. I wasn't either. I was not so-called stage parent. So I wasn't one of the people pushing him into the business. In fact, I was constantly asking him, "You really still want to do this?" Because I wanted to be out of it. I didn't want him to go into this. He kept getting more and more jobs. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna let him go. But my whole thing was that you don't have to do this. Where a lot of kids would get the opposite. I would see parents like, learn your lines or get that right, or they're pushing, and I was constantly pulling. So he was the one going forward, not us. So I think that balance worked out better for him as far as keeping level-headed.
And I suppose, Victor Libby, we see many sort of teenagers, and I know, suppose, in terms of being involved in show business and acting, in terms of that, people might have cystic fibrosis, people might have very bad asthma and stuff like that. And in terms of that, is it already kept under wraps as such in terms of the young child being sort of found out, and maybe companies saying, oh, listen, there could be a risk or a health sort of factor in there. So in terms of Cameron, when he was signed on, did you have to sort of sign forms about medical conditions or anything like that? Or was it ever asked?
No, because Cameron didn't develop his epilepsy until he was 16 years old. He had already been working 9-10 years already before that happened. And then when it did happen, there was a large gap of time between his first seizure and when he was diagnosed as epileptic. So it was never an issue as far as his work. Obviously, if he would have not passed away, it would have become. But one of our main things with the foundation is to get rid of the stigma behind epilepsy or any kind of disability for actors or anybody, because everybody has something that they have to deal with, and you shouldn't be discriminated against because of that. So one of our main things is to bring epilepsy out of the shadows, destigmatize it, and make it so that it's okay as long as we take our certain precautions and handle it correctly.
Yeah, I suppose, Victor Libby, in terms of Cameron developing the epilepsy you mentioned at 16, was there sort of signs in the months coming up before he got this sort of seizure that was he feeling tired, fatigued? Was he sort of sleeping a lot? Was there any sort of symptoms that you could go, was he sleep patterns, was he eating, was taste or food, was there any sort of signs at all that you could sort of say, well, look back, there could be something in that? Or?
As a matter of fact, it was completely out of the blue. When he had his first seizure, so strange and out of the ordinary, I just didn't understand what the hell happened to him. The EMT, we called it the EMT, was acting strange. We saw him at the tail end. We saw him basically coming out of it and coming back around, and it was so bizarre. And then we didn't know what happened until we figured it out. No, there was no sign, there was no warning, there's no family history. No one in either of our families has epilepsy. So it was completely out of the blue.
Yeah, and Victor Libby, I'm not going to actually talk about Cameron's sort of sad passing, but yeah, I just want to talk about the celebration of his life and in terms of the foundation itself. When did that sort of idea come to your heads in terms of doing something to honor Cameron's sort of memory? Was it just in terms of your own sort of awareness of epilepsy as probably parents dealing with a son of epilepsy, that you probably felt that you weren't aware of the condition, that you wanted maybe help other parents that who might, as teenagers at 15 or that might suddenly develop the disorder?
Well, initially it was a kind of a knee-jerk reaction to his passing. We couldn't let him just die and his life be over, and that's it, because he was already involved in doing charitable work with water, sourcing clean water for developing nations, and also for he was very anti-violence, especially gun violence. So the initial thought was just to carry on his charitable and philanthropic endeavors that he was already doing. But then, it occurred to us, well, wow, he passed from epilepsy, so we need to do something about that. The epilepsy only actually came after our initial reaction was just to carry on what he was already doing, because our son was very non-materialistic. He was very kind and giving. He was very inclusive. He was all about diversity. He was all about helping the underdog, because he knew that he had a voice. He knew he came from a place of privilege that a lot of people didn't share, and he wanted to, leave an impact, a positive impact on the world. But the epilepsy component of the foundation came second to us just carrying on his charitable legacy.
And I suppose, Victor Libby, I suppose you have had many sort of foundations all over the world who do sort of great work in epilepsy and research and sort of developing what goes on in terms of neurology and the sort of human brain. The project offering a bursary or a fund in terms of great scientific breakthroughs in sort of epilepsy and all that. What made you feel that in terms of that you needed to honor the scientists in Cameron's name that do this sort of great sort of work? And when did you feel that it was probably to highlight their work on a global scale, obviously by attaching sort of Cameron's name to it in terms of raising its popularity and awareness, to given the popularity Cameron has not only as an actor but as a person?
Well, he and we are very, very aware that he had a platform and people, fans and people that, were watching what he was doing. And because he, died of epilepsy, we were very, felt very strongly that we didn't want any other parents to go through what we've gone through. And so our objective is to end and cure epilepsy and end SUDEP, which is sudden unexpected death in epilepsy, which is how Cameron died. So in the very beginning, when we first started the foundation, we really didn't know what we were doing. We'd never done that before. It wasn't something that we ever wanted to do. But like Vic said, it was a knee-jerk reaction. And it was like the same day he passed, we were like, we have to continue what he was working on, because he was really doing a lot around philanthropy, and it was having very big impact, and we recognized that. And it was just like, oh my God, what are we, it was just an immediate reaction, but it took us a while to figure out what we were actually doing. And people were reaching out to us from all different areas, and we were able to build some relationships pretty early on around epilepsy and cure epilepsy. Citizens United for Research on Epilepsy became a quick friend and partner to us. And we just realized that they actually have done a lot of work in this realm. And, there's not a lot of people with notoriety who are talking about epilepsy. When you think about like Parkinson's, for example, and you have Michael J. Fox, who's been a huge advocate for that, and he has just pushed, research forward in the Parkinson's world. It just was like, who's doing that for epilepsy? And while, I wouldn't say that Cameron has any of the notoriety that Michael J. Fox has. He has some. And so we just thought like, well, maybe that's, you know, something that we should take a responsibility to continue with his voice, and make sure that we do all we can in our power, and you know, on behalf of the foundation, on behalf of Cameron and his village of people that were supportive of him, to push research forward, to really focus on getting a cure and, you know, better awareness and better medications that target different epilepsies and all of those things that we've come to learn after he died.
And in terms of the award, the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland sort of won the award. And in terms of their work, sort of what stood out for you in terms of their sort of that got them the sort of top prize in terms of the funding, the bursary this time around. What was it about that sort of project and work that made it for you that you felt that they deserved the award?
Christina.
Dr. Christina.
All about Christina.
But what happened actually was Cure, who's our partner, they accept proposals for research every year, and they do a full review of all of the proposals, and they get hundreds of proposals for about 5 awards. And so they presented some of the proposals to us, and there was something about Christina, Dr. Christina, and she was going to study the rhythm of the brain activity in sleep. And Cameron was all about music and dance. That was his joy. That's when he lit up. And he had a certain rhythm to how he lived life that was very different than anybody else, I think, ever. And so the word rhythm really popped out to me. And then I was told by the people who were evaluating the proposals that Dr. Christina is somebody who, she proposes things and it's like, there's no way she could do all of this for this, and that she always delivers. And so I just felt a kindred spirit with her immediately. And it just flew off the page for me. And that it just was, that's it. We're gonna fund this research project.
And the whole idea is for us to be impactful. Like as a foundation, we are minuscule, we're tiny, we're new, but because our son has a global reach, we can be impactful. And we feel like Dr. Christina, her passion and her energy and what she did in her proposal matches exactly with our vision. And so that's why it was a good fit for us. And we know it's going to be impactful.
And we also feel like Cameron was all about giving young people creative opportunities.
Right.
He just understood that, you know, young people who are going down a wrong road, if they can find a creative passion, they could potentially change their life. And I think we want to bring young researchers into the field because we recognize that, you know, you need good researchers for the long haul to really have an impact on this disease.
New thinking, fresh thinking, out of the box thinking, not somebody that's just set and you know, at the old ways. We need somebody to push it forward.
I suppose, Victor Libby, just in the interview on a sort of a brighter note and getting back to sort of celebrating Cameron's sort of life as well. Speaking to Cameron when he was an actor in terms of any sort of pomp, did he ever say to you in terms of, Dad, man, when I'm older, I would like to be play the role of Batman, or I would like to be James Bond, or did he have any particular Rocky? Did he have any sort of particular movies that he in mind in terms of or TV series that he felt himself, I'd love to do that when I'm older, or love to be involved in that sort of project?
I would say it was more about, he really, you know, obviously he grew up working for Disney. And he was very, very interested in the creative acting process. And he just wanted to do compelling roles that would give him an opportunity to stretch his acting abilities and wings. He was all about the creative process. So I think he loved a challenge. And so I think he was looking to do things outside of the Disney realm in terms of, you know, real deep human characters. And so I wouldn't say he was ever like, he just wasn't the kind of kid who was like,
he didn't want to be Batman.
No, he didn't want to be Batman.
He wanted to be dramatic. He wanted to be man. We once talked about you know, leading man, like dramatic, like Tom Cruise type, not be Tom Cruise, but those types of roles, super exciting, athletic, dramatic types of things like that.
Super athletic, doing a
He was-
lot of stunt work.
He could do any kind of flip, he was so athletic. And in fact, when he was on Disney Gate, some of the shows, he would be like on a trampoline or something, they would always put a wire on him. He didn't need that wire. He didn't need, but they had to do it for insurance reasons. But you know, he would always get mad when they would do so much safety stuff because he would jump off of anything, flip off of anything. He would do any kind of stunt or trick. So he wanted to do those types of things.
And I suppose, Victor Libby, lastly, sort of last question, and sort of bring it back to one of Cameron's true loves. You mentioned basketball, and you grew up sort of being a Lakers sort of thing. So tell me, was Cameron a sort of Kobe fan or LeBron fan or Magic
Kobe.
Johnson? And who was his favorite?
Kobe 100%. He's got Kobe jerseys. He can emulate Kobe's moves, Kobe shots, Kobe. It was all about Kobe. One time, Cameron was involved with something called Home Walk, which is a charity we do every year where people walk and they donate money for homelessness. And so Cameron kind of became an ambassador for Home Walk. And Kobe was also involved with Home Walk, and he was like supposed to be like the MC one year. And that particular year, he got the flu and he couldn't do it. So Cameron still went, and we ended up getting Kobe's trailer for Cameron. So that was like, oh my God, we're in Kobe's trailer. You know, all the candy and everything inside the trailer was for Kobe. And it was just a dream come true. And he wasn't even there. Just to be in Kobe's bubble was like so awesome for Cameron.
And it was surprising he never met Kobe.
He
Their paths crossed so many times.
We've got a son, Kobe basketball, so many Lakers. Was involved with in her work. Go to the game. Oh my God, we all loved it. Kobe, that was him.
On that note, Victor Libby, thanks for taking your time today to speak to us about the Cameron Boyce Foundation, to celebrate Cameron's life, to tell us a bit about not only about his acting, but his personal interests, his love of basketball, and obviously acknowledge the work that has been done in terms of epilepsy worldwide, in terms, and the award, Dr. Christine's award that she won in terms of the Royal College of Surgeons, and hopefully many more awards to come. Hopefully we can tackle this stigma that is epilepsy and sort of raise awareness. And obviously Cameron Boyce, obviously he has played a big part in the foundation's role in terms of raising this awareness, but also it's very important in these times when you talk about these things that you do not only mention the name, that you celebrate the person as well. So it's very important.
And make sure you go, have your listeners go to the CameronBoyceFoundation.org.
And we're going to come to Ireland.
We'd love to have you, no doubt, sometime, Victor and Libby. But for the moment, stay safe in this sort of troublesome sort of world.
Yes.
And hopefully, Victor, when the Lakers get back in the court, you'll have your ringside seats and you'll probably to see them.
Yes, there's no fans. And watching the basketball, and there's no fans. It's so bizarre. But at least they're playing. And they won the championship again, because we've been kind of pretty terrible for the past 7-8 years.
Cameron would have been very happy.
So happy because he suffered through really bad basketball. So
anyway, thank you, our Irish friends. Thank you so much. We're so excited to work with you.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you, Libby. Take care and stay safe.
yeah.